The Visit to the Amazon. The little wriggling worm was on a mission to make a difference and do good. He had heard stories about the indigenous peoples in the Amazon and wanted to visit them to learn more about their way of life and find out how he could help. So he set out on his journey, eager to learn more about the indigenous peoples. First, he had to go to the airport with luggage and found himself on the plane quite quickly. Such a long journey, and he had never made before. He also had a test of courage ahead of him. He had to parachute out of the plane upon arrival and land directly in the Amazon. He traveled for days through the dense jungle and winding rivers until he finally arrived at the edge of the Amazon. When he arrived, he was welcomed by the natives with open arms. They were fascinated by the little wriggling worm because they had never seen anything like it. The wriggling worm spent the next few weeks living with the natives and learning about their culture and traditions. He was amazed at their way of life and their connection to the land. He saw how they lived in harmony with nature and wanted to find a way to help the natives protect their way of life. So he asked them what they needed, and they told him they needed someone to help them spread their message to the world. The indigenous peoples of the Amazon have long faced a variety of challenges that threaten their survival. From deforestation and the destruction of their traditional lands to the imposition of foreign cultures and religions, indigenous peoples have had to fight for their rights and their way of life. For generations, indigenous peoples have lived in harmony with nature and depended on the environment for their livelihood. In recent years, however, their way of life has been threatened by deforestation in the Amazon. As a result of the destruction of their natural habitats, indigenous peoples have suffered a dramatic decline in their food supply, as well as the loss of their traditional lands and ways of life. In addition, indigenous peoples face the imposition of foreign cultures and religions as the government and corporations continue to encroach on their lands. They drill for oil and build huge roads across the jungle. Huge soy plantations and cattle ranches now dominate life in the Amazon. In the process, they show no consideration for the inhabitants and thus destroy their villages. In an effort to make money, the government has allowed logging companies to encroach on indigenous lands, while religious groups have tried to convert the indigenous population to their own faith. This has led to numerous conflicts between indigenous peoples and the outside world, as indigenous peoples struggle to protect their way of life from outsiders. The indigenous peoples of the Amazon also face the effects of climate change. The construction of huge dams is causing the water in the Amazon to drop, and all the animals are becoming extinct. Rising temperatures and changing weather patterns have devastated their environment, destroying crops and making it difficult for indigenous people to obtain food. This has led to a dramatic population decline as indigenous people struggle to survive in the face of these environmental problems. It is clear that the indigenous people of the Amazon have faced significant challenges in recent years. As the world continues to encroach on their lands and way of life, they must fight for their rights and their future. If we are to help them, it is imperative that we take action to protect their land and way of life. The little wriggling worm knew he had the perfect platform to do so: his comic book. He decided to use his comic book to tell the story of indigenous peoples, their culture, and their way of life. The comic book was a huge success. People from all over the world read it and were inspired by the history of indigenous peoples. The wriggling worm was able to help spread their message and make a difference. He was proud of his achievement and happy that he could help the indigenous peoples in his own way.